Hey everyone, it's Saoirse. It feels very cozy and gray today, and I just wasn't getting anything done, so I figured I would come and talk to you about a book that I just finished recently and I really enjoyed, and that is Elmet by Fiona Mozley. And this is one of those books that has I can't remember what this is called, I should know this, but when the pages are all uneven and it makes it kind of hard to turn, like if you're trying to flip through the pages, you can't. But it's a very particular look and I like it a lot. And it also has another of my favorite things, which is when paperbacks have a flap. So I loved the cover. I was like, I want something that makes me feel like I'm in the woods, and this cover just clearly did that for me very easily. And then I saw it was set in Yorkshire, in England. And so that was another, check, that sounds like something I would enjoy. And it seemed to have this sort of like Captain Fantastic, strange dad raising his strange children in an unconventional way sort of vibe. So I was like, I'm into that, sure. So I picked it up, I think at Barnes & Noble a few months ago. In Florida actually, and then I brought it over here, and now I have to get it back to Florida soon. But anyway, this was published in 2017, by the way, and hello, Man Booker Prize finalist. So when I see that, I just think, okay, this book definitely has got it going on if it's gotten that kind of attention. But then that's not always a good tool for deciding if something is worth reading, is it? Because I've definitely read some books that I did not love, that were finalists or even winners of prizes. But I really liked this one. And I always do that thing where I read the, little quotes from other people on there. A quiet explosion of a book, exquisite and unforgettable. Seductively poetic prose, magical debut novel. It's her first novel, that's the really exciting thing. So yeah, I always read those quotes and then I get really stuck in other people's opinions, and it kind of makes it difficult for me to, judge it without knowing anything else. And I always read the summary as well, like the little, and some people don't do that, and I can't imagine just going into a book blind with no idea what it's about. But I kind of wish I'd done that with this one, because they gave away some weird stuff in here that, it was just a weirdly written summary that kind of didn't work so well for me. But anyway, I'm sorry, Springer's, trying to eat some flowers. Hey! Cats! I love them. Okay, so what I really enjoyed about this book, and I have to say, it takes me a while to get into anything, especially fiction these days. I need at least 50, 60 pages before I'm getting into it. And alright. So it was slow going at first. I'd read 10, 20 pages a day. He just really wants to get on my lap, but he's not doing it. So, anyway, I was just reading little bits, and then when I had a day where I could read a lot at once, there he is. Then I really got focused and got into it and allowed myself to get into the rhythm of the book, because the thing that's so awesome about this is the poetic language, which if you've been, watching my videos for a while, that's what I'm obsessed with, more so than plot or anything else. It's, the beauty of language and what writers are able to do with it. So I quite enjoyed that aspect of it. It really flows very well. There is something interesting about this book, which is that she flashes forward from the very beginning. I think it's the first section is this italics. And when it's in italics, then that is in the future. And I just wonder, how does everybody feel about that? Because usually you see it with past, like, flashbacks are in italics, and, or not even in italics, but like there's flashback scenes like that are separate chapters. I kind of like better when they're throughout the story and don't have that sort of like punctuated section thing to them. And the flash forward thing is very interesting because I've talked about this before. I tend to not like when people give away a plot point or like anything about the future. Like basically I lose interest if I know something that happens in the future of the storyline, because then it feels like there's no more stakes. But that being said, I feel like she did it really well. And you know, at first I went in, of course, very skeptical, like how are you going to pull this off? And I ended up really liking it. So I will read you just a few of the phrases that I liked in here, passages, if you will. So it's about, well, I should tell you, it's the two children, Daniel and Cathy, who are being raised by their father, John, and Cathy is a little bit older than Daniel. And as I said, they're living in Yorkshire. And the father has built this house for them. So it's narrated by Daniel, and he's talking about the house. He says, I planted pansies and daffodils and roses of all different colors, and a cutting taken from a white flowering climbing plant I found spewing out of an old dry stone wall. It was the wrong time of year to plant, but some shoots came up, and more came the following year. Waiting is what a true house is about. Making it ours, making it settle, pinning it and us to the seasons, to the months, and to the years. I really liked that statement about like pinning the house, pinning it to us, and like pinning it to the seasons. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about seasons because I didn't have seasons growing up in Florida, and now I have seasons here, and it's just the strangest thing. So like reading about this house and the way that it's going to change over time with the seasons, it's really beautifully done. There's this theme of homemaking and sorry, Springer is scratching. And yeah, the nature language and the homemaking language is very well done and really vivid. So I felt like I could see what was going on in this book, which I can't always. So it's really nice when you feel like you can picture everything without, you know what I mean? Like when you read, it's not like, I don't know, sometimes you feel like you have a sort of movie projector thing going on where you can actually visually see it, and other times it's like this weird visual feeling thing it's very hard to describe. But yeah, it's a quite evocative book, evocative of many things. I don't know, whatever. And this is from one of the Flashforward passages, and this is Daniel like years later, just walking through the landscape. I think it's stated what he's doing, but I like, in case there's a spoiler, I don't want to say, but this is just like a description of the land. I see a chain of pylons stretching from far ground to foreground, like a vast, disarticulated arthropod, and tethered shadows, more gargantuan still, lying upon the hills like the insignia of pagan forebears. I see bovine silhouettes shift steadily across meadows, hulking their uneasy weight from trough to furrow and elsewhere. I see the dusk settle on the fleeces of grazing ewes like sparks from flint to tinder. I watch the land glow and the sky burn, and I step through it with a judicious tread. I pass from Elmet bereft. Ooh. It's just so pretty. And, you know, you feel like you've read one description of a landscape, you've read them all, but I love how different writers bring their voice to a particular image. So that was an example of describing like land and setting, and then I also love how she describes people. This is them meeting a neighbor who's going to teach them. And Daniel thinks she looked tired, either a tiredness from the early morning or a tiredness from a long life. She was perhaps 40, but seemed both older and younger, with irises that were both a bright green and a dull yellow, and an uncertain stoop that you see in both old ladies and adolescent girls. In the moment she stared at us, she inhaled deeply and exhaled quickly, as if she were conjuring a beginning or marking an ending. So she does something I really love there, which is something with duality, like juxtaposing things, like the old woman and the young girls, and inhaling and exhaling, a beginning and an ending. And you see how she just like goes boom, 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 both bright and dull, like early morning or tiredness from long life. And it's done so well that it's like, it has this rhythm and it has this like quality where you know where to breathe, and it's like poetry, but it's in prose, and that's what I get so excited about. I just love that, and that's like the way that I try to write, and it doesn't always work. It does not always come across in the way that I want it to, but it is something to aspire to for sure. Oh, I just liked this because I could relate. As the afternoon proceeded and it started to fall dark, I began to worry. It was not that it was late. It was not yet 4 o'clock, and it was that time of year when it seemed to get dark again, almost before I could say I was truly awake. I didn't know when I moved to Scotland that it would get dark at like 3:30 in the afternoon in winter. So sometimes, I'll be honest, like I would sleep till noon and I would know I have 3 hours left of this day that just started for me. And it was such a depressing feeling. I really got the seasonal depression big time, worse than usual because of the insane light differences that happen here that don't happen at home. Like, it seems as though there's just never really that drastic of a difference in when sunset and sunrise are throughout the year in Florida. It's not like ever that different, but here it's, you know, you can have like 7 hours of daylight in winter and then like 17 hours in summer. It just blows my mind. So like knowing this is pretty close to like the north of England, I would say. I think Yorkshire is north, but maybe people would argue with me. And that's, you know, getting closer to being in Scotland. I was like, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. This cat, you got a lot to say today, don't you, boy? Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't decide if I want to read this like entire page and a half because it's just so cool. But maybe we'll just read a little bit. Let's see. So this is the woman Vivian who's teaching Daniel and Cathy, and she's asking Daniel, have you ever seen a whale breach? And this comes after they're talking about how Daniel's father needs violence to survive, because he does these like paid fights that are not legal, and that's how he sometimes gets money. So she then jumps into this whale breaching thing, and she says, we don't fully understand why whales do that, but there have been many suggestions. Some people say that it's to see the world, and especially the sea, from a different perspective, to catch a glimpse of what it is they spend their lives swimming around in. It's like us humans sending rockets up to the moon, only to spend the next 50 years gazing at the pictures of our own Earth. The whales want an experience like that, a different view. Some people have suggested that it's not a visual experience they're after, but a sensual one. When they breach the water, they feel the full size and heaviness of their own bodies in the air. They feel gravity and dry cold, and when they smack the hard brine with their full airborne weight, they quake to their blubber. People say that they're trying to brush off dead skin, barnacles, lichen, and that breaching is like a horse scratching its rump against rough tree bark, but it meets at the same point, doesn't it? The need for a physical sensation that they can't get any other way. That sensation becomes a fixation, and each time after they feel it, the pressure slowly builds until they can feel it again. I think it's something like that for the whales. They swim around for days, weeks even, feeding and sleeping and breathing, and they start to think about that last time they jumped clean out of the water, and how it felt when their head, then their body and fins, and then their tail all emerged from the sea, and how it felt to momentarily hover in a substance that fills their lungs but dries their eyes, and they remember especially about how it felt to return to the water after their moment in the air. That thump, that splash. The whale continues to think about the breach more and more, until the urge to repeat becomes irresistible and it erupts out of the ocean only to fall into it again. And so it's sated for a while. Your daddy's like that, I think, like one of the great whales. And when he fights, it's like one of their breaches, but bloodier, much bloodier, and it isn't a lone act. It's not just an animal in the elements. There's another animal too, another human, but it's the same, it quenches him. I ended up just reading all of it, so sorry, but it's just so great. That was just one of the most beautiful, like, pages of prose that I've read in a while. And such a unique and interesting perspective on something like that. Like, I'm trying to think of another thing, you know, that isn't violence, that, I mean, really anything that we like to do that kind of keeps us going, that we think about a lot. You could relate it to the whales and their breaching. It's kind of sad and beautiful at the same time. Ooh, I love a good quote about dreams. Indeed, in those days, I thought the most prolonged conflict in my life would be the one I faced every night against my dreams. Sometimes I thought I could sleep forever. Sometimes pulling myself out of a dream to be awake and alive in the world was like pulling myself out of my own skin and facing the wind and the rain in my own ripped, raw flesh. You know when you read a sentence and you just wish you'd written that sentence? I wish I wrote that sentence. That part about the ripped, raw flesh. Like, how often have I felt that when I've woken up and I get really grumpy in the morning because I can't separate from the dreams that I was just having, and they're often, as I've said before, very disturbing, and it's like you've lived one life for the whole night and then you're supposed to get up and live this other life, and that transition period is very difficult for me. Is anybody else like that? I'm sure there are many of us. I think that's all I'm going to read from it, and that's only up to like halfway through the book. It's really wonderful, and if you have read this, and you know how it ends, you don't have to leave any spoilers, but like, tell me, wouldn't you just love to see that ending, like, visually? I really hope that this gets made into a movie. Or maybe, you know what, I feel like I read books sometimes and I have no idea that there already is a movie version of it. That happened with Never Let Me Go, I think. And just would love to see this. No spoilers, but it is a spectacular ending, and I just was blown away, probably breathing heavily, definitely not putting the book down for anything. So I'm really, really pleased because I haven't been into fiction in a while. It's really, like, as I said, tough for me to get into it, especially, I think, as I've been writing fiction for my dissertation. So, but I finished the first draft of it, and I had my last dissertation meeting today, so I have to now go back and edit, and I have a little over a month before it's due, and the editing process is, I don't know why, just more daunting than the writing, maybe. Maybe they're equally daunting, let's be honest. But I must get to that. And I've got some other writing projects going on. Lots of things happening, big life changes, so yeah, it can be hard for me to focus on fiction, because, you know, when your brain is just like going a million miles an hour, you can't, it's very difficult to like get into a story, especially a made-up story. For me, it's much easier to read nonfiction. I should do a lot of thinking about why that is. Does anybody have any opinions on that? Like, why is it almost more comforting sometimes to just be in the real world? Like, I have so much nonfiction. Because it's like, this actually happened. I don't have to suspend disbelief at all. I don't feel like sometimes with fiction, I'll be honest, I feel like I'm wasting my time because I'm not learning anything real that has happened, like anything history-wise or, you know, science or language or anything. But then when I do read fiction, of course, I learn about writing styles, and I also, you know, gain insight that not only would inform my writing, but insight that just makes me think. And honestly, I just love to think, and I love to think in a good way, not in like a my brain is going nuts way. What was I saying? Yeah, I love things that make me like contemplate the world in a different way of looking at things. I don't know. And this was just really beautiful, very well done. So highly recommend. If she writes another book, I would probably pick it up. I don't know if she has yet, but we shall see. So that's it for now, and I don't know what I'm gonna read next. I almost thought like maybe a Jane Austen book, because I still have a few of hers that I haven't read. And then, I don't know. I thought maybe not, maybe I can't focus on that right now, we'll see. So, happy reading everyone, and thank you so much for watching.